Marshall Bruce Mathers III put a loaded gun in his mouth at age 20. Not because he wanted attention, not because he was being dramatic, but because he genuinely saw no way out of the hell his life had become. That moment, that split second before he pulled the trigger and the gun clicked empty, defines everything you need to understand about Eminem. This isn't a rags to riches story. This is a survival story. And what Marshall survived would have buried most people long before they ever stepped into a recording booth. Let's go back to where it all started. October 17, 1972, St. Joseph, Missouri. Marshall Bruce Mathers Jr. is a 22-year-old when his son is born. Debbie Nelson is just 17, still a child herself. Debbie's pregnancy was a nightmare from day one. She was in labor for 73 hours. Most women go through 12 to 24 hours maximum. Debbie nearly died. Marshall nearly died. The doctors told her the baby had suffered potential brain damage from the prolonged labor. From his very first breath, Marshall entered a world that didn't want to make room for him. And his father? Marshall Mathers Jr. took one look at his newborn son and decided he wanted no part of it. He left when Marshall was just 6 months old, packed his bags and vanished. No goodbye, no forwarding address. But it gets darker. Marshall Jr. went on to have another son, also named Marshall, with another woman. Think about that. Your father leaves you as an infant, then gives your name to his replacement child. Throughout his childhood, young Marshall would write letters to his father, dozens of them. Every single letter came back marked return to sender. His own father wouldn't even open his mail. After his father left, Debbie moved them constantly. Between the ages of 5 and 12, Marshall attended somewhere between 30 and 40 different schools. Imagine being 6 years old. You finally learn where the bathroom is, maybe make a friend. Then suddenly you're packing again. New town, new school, new bullies who see you as fresh meat. Before you can learn anyone's name, you're gone again. You never put down roots. You never feel safe. And they weren't moving to nicer neighborhoods. They were sinking deeper into poverty with each move. Detroit's 8 Mile Road became their final destination, the literal dividing line between the white suburbs and the black inner city. They lived on the black side, in a neighborhood that was predominantly African American. Marshall was one of the only white kids for miles. The house at 19946 Dresden Street was a horror show. No heat in the winter, holes in the walls, roaches everywhere. Debbie was on welfare, working odd jobs, barely keeping them fed. They ate ketchup sandwiches, bread and ketchup, because that's all they had. In 1996, during custody proceedings for Eminem's younger half-brother Nathan, a social worker observed Debbie and noted she exhibits a very suspicious, almost paranoid personality. The social worker suggested she might have Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a condition where a caregiver exaggerates or induces illness in someone under their care. Debbie constantly told Marshall he was sick. She gave him medications. She'd take him to emergency rooms claiming he was having seizures, allergic reactions, mysterious illnesses. Medical records show numerous ER visits for conditions doctors couldn't verify. Marshall grew up believing he was fragile, broken, constantly on the verge of death. She was also violently unstable. She'd fly into rages over nothing. One day she'd be crying and clingy. The next she'd be throwing objects, telling him he ruined her life. Marshall later said he never knew which mother he'd get when he came home. That kind of instability rewires a child's brain. You become hypervigilant. You learn to read micro-expressions, to detect danger before it explodes. Marshall was small for his age, skinny, awkward, and poor in a way that other kids could smell. He wore the same clothes for weeks, but the real violence came from a kid named D'Angelo Bailey. January 1982. Marshall is 9 years old. He's in the bathroom at Dort Elementary School when Bailey and his crew corner him. What happened next put Marshall in a coma for over a week. Bailey beat Marshall so severely that his brain began to bleed. A subdural hematoma, bleeding between the brain and the skull. The doctors didn't know if he'd wake up. When he finally did, he had temporary vision problems and recurring headaches that lasted for years. Debbie tried to sue the school district. The case went nowhere. Nobody was held accountable. This wasn't an isolated incident. Marshall was jumped and beaten throughout his school years. He learned to take a beating. He learned that nobody was coming to save him. Marshall was close to his uncle Ronnie, Ronald Dean Polkinghorne. Ronnie was Debbie's younger half-brother, only 2 months older than Marshall, more like brothers than uncle and nephew. Ronnie was the only person who believed in Marshall. Ronnie introduced him to hip-hop. He gave Marshall his first rap album, Ice-T's Reckless. He told Marshall he had talent when nobody else would. December 1991. Marshall is 19. He comes home and learns that Ronnie shot himself in the head. Suicide. His girlfriend had broken up with him. Marshall didn't speak for days. He couldn't even attend the funeral.
Remember when Ronnie died and you said you wished it was me? Well, guess what? I am dead. Dead to you as can be.
His one ally, his one believer, had decided life wasn't worth living. If Ronnie couldn't make it, what hope did Marshall have? Then in October 2004, another uncle, Todd Nelson, who had helped raise Marshall, also took his own life. 2 uncles lost to suicide. The pattern of loss and abandonment continued. At 15, Marshall meets Kimberly Ann Scott at a house party. Kim is 13. She and her twin sister Dawn are living in chaos that rivals Marshall's own home life. Marshall and Kim fell into each other like 2 drowning people grabbing onto the same piece of wreckage. It wasn't healthy. It was never healthy. But it was all they had. Kim moved in with Marshall and Debbie when she was still 13. Her home life was that bad. Suddenly, Marshall had someone who needed him. Their relationship was a cycle. Passion, violence, breakup, reunion, repeat. They fed off each other's wounds. On Christmas Day 1995, Kim gives birth to their daughter Haley Jade. Marshall is 23, broke, working minimum wage jobs, and trying to make it as a rapper in a genre that doesn't want white MCs. He loves Haley with everything he has, but now there's another life depending on him, and he has nothing to offer. Between 1992 and 1997, Marshall is grinding in Detroit's underground rap scene. He's battling at clubs like the Hip Hop Shop, going head-to-head with black rappers who were skeptical that a white boy can do this for real. He gets booed. He gets laughed at. One night he's booed off stage so aggressively he sits in his car afterward and cries. But he keeps coming back. He releases an album called Infinite in 1996. He sells maybe 200 copies, mostly to friends and family. Critics say he sounds like a Nas knockoff.
When I hear the beat, I'm tempted to make another attempt at it. I'm infinite.
The album is a failure. He's now 24. He has a daughter, a girlfriend who's furious with him. No prospects. He's working 60-hour weeks at dead-end jobs, coming home exhausted, fighting with Kim, looking at Haley and wondering if she's going to grow up in the same poverty he grew up in. And that's when he picks up the gun. He loads it, he puts it in his mouth, he pulls the trigger. Click, it's empty. Later, he'd say he didn't know if it was truly a suicide attempt or just him being reckless. But you don't put a gun in your mouth unless some part of you wants to see what happens. That moment could have been the end. Instead, it became the beginning. Immediately after his lowest point, something broke open inside Marshall. He stopped trying to be the technical safe rapper. He created Slim Shady, a character who said everything Marshall was too scared to say. Slim Shady was violent, offensive, darkly funny, and utterly free. The Slim Shady EP was recorded in 1997 for basically nothing. It was raw, angry, and unlike anything in hip-hop.
I lace tunes out this world like space moons, with a bunch of crazy moons, dismissing brains like raised moons.
A friend gave the EP to someone in the industry, who handed it to Interscope Records chairman Jimmy Levine. Levine gave it to Dr. Dre. When Dr. Dre heard it, he said to find Marshall immediately. Marshall flew out to Los Angeles in early 1998. He met Dre. They recorded My Name Is in the first session. Dre later said Marshall was the best rapper he'd ever worked with. But success didn't fix Marshall. It just gave him new demons. The Slim Shady LP drops in February 1999. It goes triple platinum. Marshall is suddenly famous. He's on MTV. He's being protested by parent groups. He's selling millions. And his life is falling apart faster than ever. In June 1999, Marshall marries Kim, just before his first major tour. But the marriage is troubled from the start. His career is exploding. They're fighting constantly. Meanwhile, in September 1999, his own mother files a lawsuit against him. Debbie sues Marshall for $11 million, claiming he defamed her in his lyrics and interviews by suggesting she abused drugs and was unstable. The case drags on for 2 years. In 2001, she's awarded $25,000, but $23,000 goes to her attorney. She ends up with $1,600. His marriage to Kim is disintegrating. She's using drugs. He's using drugs. They're screaming at each other in front of Haley. But before that, in July 2000, Kim attended one of Marshall's concerts. She watches from the audience as he performs the song Kim, a track with violent lyrics about her. On stage, he beats up a blow-up doll designed to look like her. The crowd cheers. They sing along. They laugh. Kim goes home that night and attempts to take her own life by slashing her wrists. She survives, but barely. In June 2000, Marshall sees Kim kissing another man outside a club. He assaults the man with an unloaded gun. He's arrested. He's facing felony charges. They divorce in 2001. Then incredibly, they remarry in January 2006. Marshall is trying to make it work. He's in a better place. Maybe they can fix this. But just days after filing for divorce again in April 2006, after only 3 months of marriage, another tragedy strikes. On April 11, 2006, Marshall's best friend Deshaun Proof Holton is shot and killed at a nightclub on 8 Mile Road in Detroit. Proof, the man who got Marshall to become a rapper in the first place. The man who formed D12. The man who believed in him when no one else did. The brother who pushed him to become who he is. Marshall is devastated. He later admits he was so high at Proof's funeral that it disgusts him to think about. He was in his own grief, drowning in it, while Proof's wife and children were suffering too. Without Proof, Marshall later says there would be no Eminem, no Slim Shady, no D12. Proof was funny, smart, charming. He inspired everyone around him. He can never be replaced. And Marshall, he relapses hard.
You would've glued it, bind it. So many things, time I'd give anything to rewind it.
By 2002, Marshall is taking pills to sleep, pills to wake up, pills to numb the anxiety, pills to handle the pressure, pills to forget. He's taking Vicodin, Valium, Ambien, anything he can get. At his worst, he's taking upwards of 40 to 60 pills a day. His tolerance is so high that he should be dead. Proof's death in 2006 sends him spiraling even deeper. He's going into the studio high every day, just goofing off, not really working. The wheels are coming off completely. He nearly dies. On December 15, 2007, Marshall overdoses on methadone. His organs are failing. His heart nearly stops. The doctors tell his friends that if he'd gotten to the hospital an hour later, he'd be dead. He wakes up in the hospital not knowing where he is. And the first thing he asks for? More pills. The next 2 years are a blur. He gains weight, balloons up from the inactivity and junk food. He holes up in his house. He stops making music. He's not even sure who he is anymore. April 2008. Marshall decides to get clean. Not because he wants to, because he has to. Haley is 12. His other daughters, Elena and Whitney, whom he's adopted, are watching him fall apart. If he doesn't stop now, he'll die, and they'll grow up the way he did. He goes to rehab. He relapses. He goes again. He relapses again. Recovery is hell. His body revolts. He can't sleep without pills. He can't think without pills, but he doesn't quit. He starts running, obsessively running, 10 miles a day, 17 miles a day. He replaces the pill addiction with an exercise addiction. It's not exactly healthy, but it keeps him alive. And slowly, agonizingly, he gets clean. Relapse in 2009 is him working through his demons. Recovery in 2010 is his declaration that he's still here. Not Afraid becomes an anthem for everyone who's ever felt like giving up.
I'm not afraid to take a stand.
Today, Marshall Mathers is over 16 years sober. He's raised 3 daughters who are well-adjusted and happy. He still lives in the Detroit area. He never left. He's become a mentor to younger artists. But the trauma doesn't go away. He's talked about having OCD, likely from the hypervigilance of his childhood. He's intensely private because fame made his life unbearable. He doesn't trust easily because everyone he trusted abandoned him or sued him or used him. So what did it take for Eminem to become Eminem? It took a father who abandoned him before he could walk. It took a mother with serious mental health issues who gave him medications he didn't need and sued him for $11 million. It took beatings that put him in a coma. It took 2 uncles lost to suicide. It took toxic love with Kim, 2 attempts at marriage, both ending in failure. Kim's own suicide attempts. In 2000, after watching him perform violent lyrics about her, then again in 2015 when she intentionally crashed her car, and another attempt in 2021 after her mother's death. It took losing his best friend Proof to gun violence in 2006. It took addiction that nearly killed him. It took standing at the edge of his own grave, gun in mouth, pulling the trigger on an empty chamber. And even after all that, after the millions of albums sold, after the Grammys, after the Oscar, after becoming one of the greatest rappers of all time, he still has nightmares. He still struggles with anxiety. He still writes music because it's the only way he knows how to process the pain. Marshall Mathers survived everything that should have killed him. But survival isn't the same as healing. You can make it out of hell, but hell doesn't leave you. It lives in your bones. It whispers in your ear. It shows up in your lyrics. Eminem won. He beat the odds. He became a legend. But Marshall is still fighting, every single day. That's the real story. Not rags to riches, not underdog to champion, just a wounded kid who learned to turn pain into art, and art into survival. And somehow, impossibly, he's still here.